accept the nomination of our party.
It's always a pleasure to have you join me on Abuja File, coming to you from the Abuja studios of KAFTAN Television. And like you know, on Abuja File, I catch you up to speed with everything happening in the FCT. My name is Sandra, and today we have an amazing guest in the studio. And together we shall be talking about drug and substance abuse in the FCT. But before we get to introduce our guest, we'll go on a short break. And when I return, we'll get to meet our guest. Stay tuned.
Accept the nomination of our party.
All right, welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Abuja File. And now we have in the studio a drug prevention counselor, and his name is Kenneth Annetor. Thank you so much for joining me on the program.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm perfect and excellent.
All right. So let's talk about drug and substance abuse, especially when it relates to the FCT. But before we go into that, let's start from the root. A lot of people have different perceptions of what they want to address or what they choose to address as drug abuse. But I know you're very experienced, so I want to get your own perspective. What would you describe as drug abuse?
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. It's always awesome to come and enlighten on this pressing issue.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Firstly, let's say what a drug is. A drug is any substance, either man-made or natural occurring, that when taken into the body, it changes the natural behavior of the body or the mind. Okay, with that as the base level. Now let's look at drug abuse. There are three things that must be captured when we define drug abuse. Firstly, when someone takes a drug without a doctor's prescription. Let me break it down more. Someone has headache. They'll say just headache. And the person now goes and says, okay, this is headache. Let me go and take Panadol. Meanwhile, headache is a symptom could be a symptom of something else. But the person has self-diagnosed and gone to take that Panadol. That is drug
abuse.
Okay, thank you. So the second one that we'll use that must be captured is when the person even has a prescription and they say, okay, take Panadol because of this feeling, these symptoms you're having. And the person now says, okay, my day is busy. I have to go to this thing, I have to go to this thing in the afternoon, I have to also do this in the evening. I might not have time to sit down again. I don't want to carry these drugs throughout the day. Instead of taking one in the morning, one in the afternoon, one in the evening, person now says, because I have something to do quickly, let me take the three at once. So that's above the prescription. That's also drug abuse. Then the third thing that would be captured in our definition of drug abuse is that if a person is taking a drug that is illegal in the particular province or territory that the person is. In some countries, you can't take alcohol freely. Some countries, you can smoke marijuana legally. So if you're in a country where it's against the law to smoke marijuana and you're caught with marijuana, that is drug abuse. So those are the three pragmas. One, taking without prescription. Two, taking above prescription. Taking illegal medication. Those define drug abuse.
All right. Okay. You've defined drug abuse to a particular extent. I know that a few years ago, we always had this topic as drug abuse. But over time, it's elaborated to drug and substance abuse.
Yes.
So now let's talk about substance abuse.
Okay.
What exactly is substance abuse?
You know, when I gave the definition of what a drug is, a drug is any substance, either natural occurring or man-made. So the drugs are the ones that are made by man. Then the substances could be natural occurring substances that can affect, that can alter the normal behavior of the body or the person's mind. Those substances can include I don't want to spark too many people's curiosity.
No, please go ahead.
Younger ones can be watching, so we have to be careful when we this thing. There are some items at home that some people might inhale that could give them some different types of feeling. I won't mention the names of those items so younger ones don't start to experiment. But there are some other popular ones that people know. They say lizard, excreta from the lizard, people lick. But
do those things actually work? Because I find it very disturbing when I hear people talk about things like that. They talk about smoking pawpaw leaf and all of that. Does that make any sense?
If professionals continue to tell you don't do this, I think you should listen to what they're saying. Because they have some experience in it. Some of them actually can alter the person's mind, the person's normal behavior.
Okay.
Yes.
So you made mention of natural occurring substances when you spoke about substance abuse. Now, let's talk about Nigerians in general before we come down to the FCT. Let's go back a bit. You talked about paracetamol, for instance, because I think that's one of the most abused drugs in the world, not just Nigeria.
Yeah, painkillers, yes.
But is there a way out of that particular situation? Because, or could there be other alternatives? Because we know that a lot of people stress a lot in Nigeria, and they always just fall back to painkillers. Do you have to always go back to the pharmacy or go to every single time you have a headache?
The truth of the matter is that there's a right way to do something.
Okay.
And that's the right way. Before you take a particular drug, you should have medical advice concerning that drug. At least medical advice. Let me just use that word, medical advice, from a medical practitioner. So there should be medical advice before you take a particular drug. If you look at statistics, maybe we'll dive into that later during the talk. Women abuse so much. The statistics in the world show that women abuse more antidepressants and more painkillers.
Okay, we'll get to that. So let's now come back to the FCT. Through your course of research and with your experiences, and you being an FCT resident, what would you rate the use of or the abuse of drug here in the FCT?
I would say that generally speaking in the north, the prevalence of drugs is actually higher than that in the south. But each one is not without their unique instances. Like in Abuja, from the statistics, you can see that there's a higher prevalence of marijuana and codeine compared to the south, especially the southeast, where there's a higher prevalence of crack cocaine and alcohol. And the popular Umpurumiri that you hear about, crystal meth, in Gombe. Gombe has one of the highest prevalence in the whole Nigeria with different drugs there.
Oh, wow.
So it's each state, each region, geopolitical zone has its own unique tendencies, but the north is more higher than the whole of Nigeria. I could give you statistics on the whole Nigeria if you want.
Please go ahead. Okay. Share all details.
The study conducted by the UNODC in 2018 showed that for every 7 Nigerians currently within the last year, one had used drugs, had abused drugs. And the study went further to break it down into the genders, that for every 4 people that are using drugs, 1 is a woman.
Okay.
So that means that it can be extended to the fact that in the basic unit of Nigeria, the family, which are family systems, most families are usually, most households are within that 7 people in a household. So it can let you estimate that there's probably 1 person in every household. Let me not say family, some families are like 5, but in a household you always find, like with staff and everybody, you always find at least 7 people. So in every household there will probably be 1 person that is abusing a particular drug in the house. Okay,
if I got what you said earlier correctly, and with what you said now, I think that figure should be higher, because you made mention of the fact that drug abuse is when you take in substance into your body, man-made or natural occurring. So you also made mention, I'm going to use paracetamol because it's one of the most common drugs, and I know that you can't say 1 out of 7, because let's say in the family, people take paracetamol whenever they choose to, or when they feel like there's a need to. So if we're saying 1 out of 7, I think that figure.
So that figure is meant to be a base to say at least.
Okay.
So it's just giving that's like the least you can find.
Okay.
So it's letting everybody know that in your household, you have to keep your eyes open. So that's like the least. So for every 7 person, at least one person. So in some cases, it could be more than that. That the statistics also go further to say that women go faster from casual drug usage to problematic drug usage than men, especially when they inject drugs. Because when women take drugs, they are most likely, especially those that inject, to take it with multiple partners. An example being that if there was a setting and they were having a session and they were taking drugs in a particular place and the drugs they're finished, a woman in the study was most likely to be called by another partner to go to another place. And so, although the drug usage for this group has stopped, that woman's drug usage has continued with another group.
Okay.
But another study by Nuendo, and it was a study of treatment centers in Nigeria. There are about 70-something, as at last year, when they had done a database, about 70-something treatment centers, of which government had less and private agencies had more. And among those treatment centers, this study was to give facts about the treatment, and it showed that for every 20 people that are treated, only one is a woman. So
women tend to seek medical help less
because of stigma. Women face more stigma in accessing treatment. Women face stigma, double stigma. They face stigma from the caregivers in terms of the staff in the rehabilitation centers, the primary health care, all those places. And when they try to access the treatment, they always be like, you're a woman, why are you doing drugs? You should be at home, you should be this. They face that type of stigma, verbal stigma. Sometimes it might even go more than verbal stigma. They also face stigma from their fellow drug users, the male drug users. And the male drug users chastise them, why are you doing this? Why you should be this, you should be this. So women face a lot of stigma. So it's actually stopping women from accessing treatment. With that statistic, 1 in every 20 that is rehabilitated is a woman. And now it's one of the things that has spurred me on, because we now begin to examine that if we don't have something to curtail this, women go faster from casual to problematic drug usage. But in terms of treatment, they
tend to seek help
less than men because of the stigma. Even the family members say, they will ask, what will I do with my children? They will ask who will take care of the children. The family members will ostracize them. So more women are in hiding. And women play a very, very important role in terms of them being in charge of the family. Women are most likely to spend more time with the children than the man. And women are so dynamic in a way that, I'm praising women. Women are so dynamic in a way that a woman can get the children ready, get the husband ready, get the home cleaned, make sure everybody has gone out to school and to work, do her drugs, get the whole place ready for them to come back. And they will come back, they will meet everything in place, house, this, their food, everything, arrange it. She's still doing her business. In the evening, she has prepared everything for tomorrow, and she's probably saying, please go and buy 1 bottle of codeine to the son or the daughter. Go and buy 1 bottle of codeine for me. And like, Mama, this said, I just want to use it to relax. I actually had someone in high school a friend in high school, schooled in Abuja here, that he went into drugs because his mom was always sending him to buy codeine. And you see the mom take the 2 bottles of codeine. But there was this disparity between prevention counselors coming to tell you that don't do drugs are bad, this, that, drugs will kill you, drugs will make you mad. And he's watching his role model, the woman that meets all his responsibility, doing the drugs and still meeting all the responsibility in a flawless way. So that's why we need to raise more awareness about the health, and tell people the truth.
Now, you've made mention of the fact that women go from simple to more complex. Is there a reason for that? Like, why is it more complex in women than in men? Because
they take it with multiple partners.
Okay.
Yes. So I explained that.
Yes, you said that, but I still don't understand. Like, if, for instance, I want to imagine that maybe it's because they are easy to persuade or something. Because if I stick to, let's say, for instance, I do codeine, which I won't do. Let's say I take codeine all the time and I have multiple partners. if my other partners do not do codeine, I don't think I would want to indulge in that. So I want to understand, is it like the mental state of women? Is it hormonal? Is it life?
It's not really about the mental state. I think the statistics was not really easy to convince per se. The statistics looked at someone that is doing drugs would want other partners that are doing drugs. Yes, and when the person is with other partners that are doing drugs, the person's drug usage would continue. And the more you take, the more let me know, is that word addicted? The more
I think addicted is the right word to use.
The more addicted you are to it, the more dependent, yes. The more dependent you are on that substance. And that's just how it is. The more you use a particular substance, the more dependent you are. Before you know it, you begin to tie those substances to behaviors, to scenarios, to feelings, to attitudes. You cannot use the substance. If you want to be around plenty people, you have made a dependency on that substance that you cannot be around plenty people except you on that substance, because there's a particular feeling that it makes you feel when you're around plenty people. Some people, maybe because they were shy, they tend to use a particular drug, and every time they want to be in that type of scenario, they have now tied that type of scenario. So every time he wants to go to a party, he wants to be on that drug, because when he's in that drug and he's on a party, he's somewhere, he feels something else, not knowing about the diverse negative effects he has on the person.
Okay. So what are the causes, or what are the reasons why people go into this substance abuse that we've been talking about?
Okay.
Because you also made mention of the fact that of a child that went into because he saw his mother do. But what are the other reasons why people do these things? And I want to add this question too, so that you can just... You said in Abuja they abuse marijuana and codeine the most. I was expecting something more sophisticated.
Like what?
Because
cocaine, raffinol?
Yes, because Abuja is said to be the luxury city of Nigeria. So if they are doing Miri and crack in the east, and that's not being seen in the FCT, is there a reason for that?
Well, there are different dynamics. The Impomiri, they also abuse alcohol there. They abuse alcohol less here. So we're just looking at the general nature. It's not that those drugs are not being abused, but when you look at the statistics, you would see what is really being abused more.
Okay.
Yes. So in terms of what can lead someone to that, well, you're discussing the risk factors. There was an interview that was opportune to grant to the Independent newspaper, and there I said that drug abuse is a public health challenge and not a criminal justice issue.
Okay.
Looking at the fact that there are so many factors that can influence someone to go into drugs, and it's not a moral issue saying that the person is immoral, because some people just see you taking drugs, this one is immoral, bad upbringing, this thing from a bad family. So there are other issues that can influence this, and we can look at a variety of issues. There is environmental factors, which are usually the basic factors. Someone can come from a neighborhood where everybody smokes cigar. You can't tell the person that smoking cigar is bad. You might come from a neighborhood where the elderly man in front of that door is always smoking weed in the morning and in the night. So he's going to school, he's watching that guy smoking weed. You're telling him that smoking weed will drive you mad, of which smoking weed can make some people go mad. Okay. He's seen there's a disparity in the information he's receiving, because he's seen this guy is always on this. So that could influence someone. So those are environmental factors. As I mentioned earlier, there's parental usage. A person might be more interested in trying a particular drug if he sees his siblings, his brothers, his auntie, his uncle, people in the household using the drug. And there's a tendency that particular drug could be left carelessly in the house. So the person is exposed to that. So that is family or parental usage. That's environmental factor I mentioned. Also, there are hereditary factors that can influence someone's usage of a particular drug. There's something that we studied. I took a course in Harvard Medical School. It was called, inside that course, there was a particular course there that was called the neurology of addiction.
Okay.
Drug abuse or drug use disorder, which people term as addiction, is drug use disorder, in which is a chronic relapsing brain disorder that is characterized by a person going after a particular drug of choice, regardless of how it affects the person, his health, personally, how it affects his family, and how it affects the society at large.
Okay.
So when we talk about drug use disorder, that's when you see the person is addicted. The diagnosis is drug use disorder. Now, when that person is having that drug use disorder, it is a chronic brain disorder. So it's a brain disease. There are other chronic relapsing brain diseases.
Okay.
Like when we say chronic relapsing, it's a chronic disease and a relapse. Cancer is an example of a chronic relapsing disease.
Okay.
You can treat cancer, everything. It's a chronic disease, you treat it, you finished it, then it can relapse for your enemy later down the line. Diabetes, to some people treat it, everything finishes and it relapses down the line. So that's the category of drug use disorder. So now, in the neurology of addiction, it proposes this statement that a person can treat drug use disorder, but when the person has drug use disorder, it actually damages a part of the person's brain. Okay. So that part of the person's brain can be passed to another generation.
Oh.
Like other hereditary traits. You would hear some families that they say the grandfather was an alcoholic, the father was an alcoholic, the son is now
an alcoholic.
So I'm sure that most viewers have heard something like that.
Yes. So that's real, something that can happen.
So that's something that can happen. So now, in that way, what they propose is that when that person takes that particular drug, the person is more likely to be susceptible to that particular drug. So when someone that their family don't really drink alcohol, taste alcohol, he doesn't get the feeling that other guy, when he tastes the alcohol, when it gets to his brain, it's a different feeling for him. And it's like, wow, what is this? If I had never taken it before, he will get addicted more quickly, faster than someone else because of the genetics at play in his family. All
right. You were making a reference, or you were rubbing more makeup to the issue of genetically transfer of drug usage and alcohol use and all of that. I've always felt like that's not a real thing. But talking about it now, and not just the fact that it's an attitudinal thing. You said it's a neurological thing.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'll take that. Okay. Earlier you made mention of the fact that drug abuse is when you take substances that are illegal in your zone or your region. So for instance, if marijuana is made legal here in Nigeria, it's no longer drug abuse.
If Nigeria, there was a legislation put forward, a bill put forward at the House of Representatives about last month for the legalization of marijuana. I'm sure in that bill they would have proposed how it will be regulated and all those things. If the House of Reps had passed it, it would have no more been drug abuse.
But can it truly be regulated? That's going to be the question.
Well, under the leadership of our chairman, Brigadier General Abuja, the chairman, chief executive of the NDLA, he has given instances of how Nigeria does not have the capacity to regulate marijuana at the moment. Giving instances of the abuse, the large seizures of these drugs, how porous the borders are, some of these things. So at this point, we would have to see if Nigeria could develop itself. But at this point, you can't say that Nigeria can regulate this drug usage, because other countries that have done these things, some of the countries that did it, they just farm it. And other companies have license to just buy it and take it out. They don't process it, they don't do anything, they just farm it. Another company comes and collects everything and takes it. So it's not, when they say it's not like they're selling it, the African countries, not like they're selling it. There's one of the countries that did it. There's a Canadian company that just buys everything. And from this marijuana, they get this CBD oil. CBD oil, they use it to treat arthritis and all these joint pains for elderly people. And like a small bottle like this sells for a very large amount in dollars. So those companies, the Nigerian marijuana has two major companies. It has the THC and CBD. The Nigerian marijuana has one of the highest THC in the whole world. And the CBD is the other component that they use for, is the other major component that they use for this treatment. So Nigerian marijuana would now be being farmed for that CBD oil. We would have to have developed our capacity to be able to regulate it before that can happen.
Okay, now let's talk about Abuja and how we can curtail drug and substance abuse here in FCT. I'm going to use the two drugs that you mentioned earlier, that's marijuana and codeine. Yes. So can these two be actually regulated? Because you just made mention of the fact that we have porous borders. And how can we actually regulate the use of codeine specifically? Because we know that pharmacists will want to sell. They want to make their money. So you can just easily walk into a pharmacy and you purchase a bottle of codeine. Like you made mention of the mother sending her children to go get her codeine. So
that was about 15 years ago.
And it's constant. It's not like it's going to stop at some point. So how can these things be regulated?
First of all, let's not put all the hinge on the pharmacist and the pharmaceutical companies, because there are other people opening small labs. And in that small labs, they're mixing things together, bottling it and bringing it out. So let's not put it majorly on the pharmacies. And I think it boils down to awareness. It boils down to people taking responsibilities.
Okay.
It boils down to different people coming out along the intervention chain for this issue of drug abuse. There are different people along the intervention chain that have roles to play. Let's start with the legislators. The legislators come up with bills, policy that can curtail the use of these drugs, that can make these companies, make some of these agencies accountable. If these agencies are not going with the regulations on how to release these things, they can hold these companies accountable, invite the CEOs, invite the MDs. If they're finding out that one particular drug is in the market, if they know that there's a company that is responsible for producing it, they can invite the MDs. Who do you sell to? What are the licenses in place? These are, they can invite the MDs or find the companies. We can look at another intervention agencies. They look at the media. The media can give strategists, activists, other civil society, social organizations opportunities to speak about these issues on their platforms. That's another level of intervention. We look at the NDLA. They are one of the major agencies that is tasked with the responsibility of drug demand reduction and drug supply reduction, going after the barons, the bandits, prosecuting them in court. We look at some of the NGOs. The NGOs are the ones that now go, even along inside the NGOs, there's the prevention. Those are the ones that go and they talk to people on the dangers of drug abuse. Those NGOs, they talk to secondary schools to stop initiation and early onset of drug usage. Then we have the ones that do advocacy, go to talk to the legislators, go to talk to TV hosts, And we have those that are in harm reduction. Harm reduction in the sense that they understand that these drugs is an issue and this person has tied his life to it. So what do we do so that the person is not a harm to himself and potentially to society? In the harm reduction strategy, people might not be common sense with it, but they used it during the time that HIV/AIDS was rampant in Africa. They actually started sharing free condoms to people, saying that you have made up your mind that you must have sex, at least use a condom. Save yourself, save your partner. And that helped to curtail the spread of HIV/AIDS. There are some programs that they initiated in some centers in partnership with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime across Nigeria as harm reduction centers, where they put people on some drug substitution programs, where they put people on some needle programs. There are some needle programs that they used abroad. They realized that these people were spreading hepatitis, AIDS, and other of these diseases. So they brought out needles for them. He said that if you ever have a dirty needle, and I watched during a training that was organized by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime some years ago, we were studying harm reduction, and they showed us how they had done needle substitution programs in terms that they gave people, if you had a old needle, a dirty needle, you'd come to the center and they would give you clean needles to use. And they showed how the dirty needles, needles are so small, but they get blunt. And as they get blunt, even those people putting into their skin, it gets destroyed. So they're using that as those people are coming to the centers to get the clean needle. They were talking to them, counseling them, and they used it as a form of intervention to get to some. Some of them were taking taking some very, very hard drugs. They had substitution programs that they will not give you that particular drug. They will give you another type of drug. That type of drug would be able to, it would cut the craving, but it would not give you the high. It will give you another type of feeling. And those drugs were not addictive. And some people were put on these substitution programs, and it has been proven to work.
Okay.
So those are the value chain, the intervention chain. You have the policymakers, the Federal Ministry of Health, the legislators.
It's a lot.
We have the NDLA, we have the media, we have the clergies too, talking to their congregation. We have the civil society
Organization.
yes, like us.
All right, I think we've gone far into this conversation, and I think on a very good day, we're going to have another conversation where we just talk about harm reduction programs, how these things work and how we can implement them here in Nigeria.
Okay.
Well, then let's round this off with relapse. How to get help when you're having drug abuse, when you are used
Drug use disorder.
Okay, drug use disorder. How do you seek help when you're having drug use disorder, and how do you take care of yourself so that you don't relapse?
Okay. Under the leadership of our chairman, Brigadier General Abuja Marwa, the NDLA has established a drug-free helpline.
Yeah.
In which the toll-free line, if you just look across your screen, some of the major stations, you will always see them displaying it and showing it. So you can just tune in, you can just call that line for free and get help. Also, it's always good to talk to a treatment professional.
Okay.
Also, the UNODC, during the COVID-19, they did a program where they created a database of treatment centers across Nigeria, and they divided it into geopolitical zones. Now, in those treatment centers, they were able to establish which one is this, which one is that, and they're able to call people, put phone numbers of organizations on it. And as they put those phone numbers of organizations there, they actually put it online. So if you search the Nigerian Drug Help Net, you'll be able to find an organization in your region. You'd see a phone number, you see a name, someone that you can talk to, is credible and certified by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime.
All right, thank you so much. It's been amazing talking to you.
Or you can call us too. We are very able to talk to you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for coming on the program. It's been amazing talking to you. And I'm going to have to talk to you again, especially on that harm reduction. Okay. Yes, we're going to have that conversation. Thank you so much for watching the program. It's been amazing talking to our guest, Kenneth Annetor. Until I come your way next time, I am Sandra. Bye for now.
Stand before you today to accept the nomination of our party.